Hey guys, this is Nick and welcome to your Linux, open source and privacy news for the first half of June 2020. This time we've got Lenovo supporting Linux on their whole ThinkPad and ThinkStations lineup, Linux Mint fighting snaps, and some new Linux-powered hardware being released. Let's unpack all of that right after this. This video is sponsored by Linode, the largest independent cloud computing provider. Linode makes it easy to create your own secure personal space on the internet. Just about everyone needs a website these days, but if, like me, you've used simple drag-and-drop website providers, you know they tend to lack customization, lock your website onto their platform, tend to be pretty slow, and charge extra for basic features. Linode makes it as easy as possible for you to deploy enterprise-grade WordPress, Drupal, or even static websites in just seconds with their one-click apps. These apps basically give you the same tools that businesses use and allow you to truly own your content, make websites that are ultra portable, and ensure you only pay for what you need. So level up, start building your website, your projects, or personal blog on a platform you can trust with Linode. Sign up today and get $20 in credit on your new Linode account using the link in the description. June the 1st. Something I missed in the previous news video, Microsoft had announced their own package manager called Winget, but it turns out they blatantly copied another pre-existing one called apt-get. This doesn't fix the issue that Microsoft ripped off someone else's work, but at least now they credit the original creator in Winget. An apology would have been nice, at least. EA followed up on their promise to open source their Command & Conquer Remastered collection and opened up a GitHub repository containing the source code for Red Alert and Tiberian Sun. People should now be able to toy with this, make mods, or even port the games to other platforms that the games were never intended to run on. June the 2nd. Total War Troy was planned to release on Linux, but since it's now exclusive to the Epic Games Store for a year, the Linux version is on hold as well. Feral will handle the port, but this exclusivity deal means that the game will have to wait for a while before we can play it natively on our platform, which is a shame. The game will actually be free on the Epic Games Store for the first 24 hours, which denotes that a bunch of money must have changed hands with this deal. I really disapprove of these kinds of exclusivity deals, and this is another proof that all they do is hurt consumer choice. June the 3rd. Lenovo announced full Ubuntu and Red Hat support on their whole ThinkStation and ThinkPad Series P line. All of these machines will be available to buy with a Linux distro pre-installed, which is a major step forwards for Linux in general. Lenovo is widely regarded as one of the best hardware makers out there, and seeing them support our platform of choice as a main choice is fantastic news. This also means that Linux enthusiasts will probably find that all of these machines work with any Linux distro, since there will be no specific driver configuration or installation required. Linux Mint will block snaps from installing on their distro. It's not just not shipping Snapd by default, they also block the installation of Snapd through apt, which means that users who want to use snaps will have to install the system manually. They compared snaps to proprietary software and point out that you can modify them, audit them, or point them to a different store. While they have the right to do whatever they want with their distro, I still feel it's a big stand they're making and one that doesn't benefit users. Not shipping snaps by default would probably have been enough. Google has been sued for $5 billion for tracking users even in incognito mode. This is a complex issue since incognito mode was never pitched directly as a way to not be followed or tracked, but more as a way to avoid having all browsing data stored on your machine. Still, the branding and the word incognito kinda lets you think that no tracker will work in this mode, which is not the case, so I understand how that could be misleading. We'll have to see if the courts dismiss this, or if Google and other browser makers will have to be more precise about what that mode actually does. June the 4th. Core Control, an advanced app to control your AMD GPU, has received an update to support the latest AMD Navi GPUs. The app lets you play around with your GPU clock speed, fan speed, and generally lets you overclock through a simple graphical user interface. It also can apply power profiles to various native or Windows games, and also lets you tweak some CPU settings as well. If you're using an AMD GPU, you should definitely take a look at it. June the 6th. Proton 5.0-8 was released with a host of performance improvements and bug fixes, especially for Doom Eternal, Streets of Rage 4, or Detroit Become Human. It also pulls in the latest DXVK, F-Audio, and VKD3D. Shortly after, Proton 5.0-9 was also released, fixing issues with games launching with Origin and a crash for Final Fantasy XII. Wine 5.10 was also released. It brings more progress on the Wine D3D backend, which is an alternative to DXVK, better support for anti-cheat drivers, which should end up making some anti-cheat tools not detect wine as a cheat, and a lot of bug fixes, including for Sniper Elite 2 and 3, Zombie Army Trilogy, Star Force 3, or Trackmania Nations. June the 10th. The PineTab was available for pre-order. I say was, because the Pine64 has already sold out the whole inventory of this Linux-powered tablet. The PineTab is the counterpart to the PinePhone, a piece of hardware intended for developers to tailor their Linux-based systems to work on mobile devices. It sold for $99 and will probably come back on the shelves as time passes. June the 11th. Starlabs, a Linux hardware manufacturer, has announced their Starlabs 13-inch laptop Mark IV. It's designed in-house and offers 10th gen Intel CPUs with a full HD display and what they call an over-provisioned star drive, which seems to be a very fast SSD. It's got a healthy selection of ports as well, with HDMI, USB-A and C, and a micro SD card reader. It's available for pre-order for less than $800. Sadly, it doesn't offer keyboards other than the English layout and doesn't have a version with a dedicated GPU, but it still looks like an awesome machine. If you prefer AMD CPUs, you can also check out System76's new Serval, which uses desktop-class Ryzen CPUs with NVIDIA GPUs. This hefty beast is based on a generic Clevo design, but it offers a lot of horsepower if you need a full-blown workstation. It starts at $1,300 and can be ordered now. More hardware news, as Elementary OS has a new partner program for computer retailers. They now have 2 retailers officially supported, with 12 different models shipping Elementary OS Hera by default. One of these retailers is Laptops with Linux, a Netherlands-based retailer that sells Clevo designs running Elementary OS. The other one is the aforementioned Starlabs. It's good to see Elementary OS actually being supported by hardware makers and manufacturers, and this keeps tickling my hardware lust more and more. June the 13th. Collabora submitted a patch to the Linux kernel that would improve performance for games running with Wine. The implementation of a specific API seems better in Windows than in Linux, and improving it directly in the kernel would give a performance boost to many titles, which is always welcome. The patch has not yet been accepted into the kernel and would obviously only work for future versions, but that's a good step to make sure that we can reach performance parity when playing Windows games on Linux. June the 15th. A new PinePhone Community Edition will ship with Postmarket OS. This distro is fine-tuned for mobile phones and is based on Alpine Linux. It serves as a base, and you can then install any desktop environment, well, mobile desktop environment in that case, like Plasma Mobile, Phosh, or Ubuntu Touch. Like the UbiPorts Community Edition before it, it will sport the Postmarket OS logo on the back of the case, and will retail for $150, with $10 of each sale going to Postmarket OS. Pre-orders start in July. And that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please consider liking, subscribing, or turning on notifications. If you really did like the video, don't hesitate to check out the links in the description below to help support the channel. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!